Welcome to another streamer panel. Today we have a bunch of questions to go through, talking about streaming. So if you're thinking, what should we adjust in terms of Gwent bounce patching? But it's not this. We're talking about streaming. We're talking about the business side of things, behind the scenes. And hopefully also answering the biggest question in the Gwent community right now. Is Gwent content dying? Because the streaming scene has changed a lot in the past 4 weeks. And people are getting worried. Here's some rumors about Storybook Brawl. Maybe it's Gwent 2 in disguise. You never know. So let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we, guys? And
right.
you guys think Gwent content is dying? Let's just hop in right there.
It's sustaining, which is about what it's been doing for the last 2 years at this point. It hasn't seen much growth or seen much decline, in my opinion, just based off the numbers.
All right. What do you
Do you
think?
think that the last couple of weeks has been a bit of a decline because of the fact that we're off season right now, and we've kind of been stuck with a meta that's a little bit dull, and everyone's kind of just anticipating the expansion. Also, the fact that Storybook Brawls, a lot of people are trying that out, so it does seem like there's a bit of a dip, at least relatively speaking. But we'll see what happens when the expansion comes out, how that looks to shape things up in 3 weeks from now, I guess.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you that there is a decline that does exist. It's just expected because that's how it behaves after every single expansion anyway.
Yeah. I think though this one is a little bit more of a slightly bit more of a decline than usual.
I don't think so. I mean, Sully Gnome doesn't really the viewer numbers are about where I would expect them to be.
Yeah, I'll back Bushy up in terms of viewer numbers. I think you're seeing a decline, but last year on 2020 this time, there was also a decline. I was also curious about it.
Yeah, I didn't compare it to last year, to be fair, but
yeah, well, I would also say, going to Spirit's point, is if Gwent is a growing game, you want to see Twitch growing ideally, right? So let's say 1% of all Gwent players watch Twitch. Being a year later and being at the same number is also concerning. Because it's like, okay, unless viewership changes, or unless less people are watching live streams, then we might actually have like some level of stagnation in the Gwent space. And also with that, you're starting to see bigger names start bowing out a little bit. We're seeing less people like Trynet, Mr. Habla, Watchlake. But I think a lot of their individual reasons are because their goals as content creators and what that means and where they have to go doesn't necessarily fully depend on Gwent. And it's just all coming in coincidental timing.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. Like, I do think a big part of it is like, for me personally, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but like the game is just like incredibly unenjoyable compared to what it was like throughout the rest of the year. Like, I mean, the thing is, I played Gwent for like 4.5 years, right? Like 3 months ago, I was streaming like 8 hours a day, and I was playing off stream sometimes, even still. Yeah. Now, obviously, a big part of that is I've clearly played the game too much and I've burnt myself out, and there's like many factors of that. But also, like, you can even just see by looking at Reddit posts, there's no smoke without fire, right? Like, people are not enjoying the game as much as they would hope to, right? Like, you can go on and look at Reddit posts pretty on a weekly basis where people will have like a discussion of why are people leaving Gwent, like why are Twitch streamers not, and even in the comments in there, a lot of people are saying, yeah, they don't really feel like the meta is that enjoyable. And obviously, we've had like a change in like how the expansions work. So previously, you would wait 6 months for an expansion, and then when the expansion got, there'd be so much to do. Whereas now it's kind of been like the opposite impact, right? An expansion comes out, you've got 24 new cards. On the first day, I could make a deck for every faction, and I wouldn't be that far away from like the meta deck at the end of the season, right? And I think like the other thing is, if you try and then be creative, for me personally, this is certainly like, I get a lot of enjoyment of being competitive with like off meta decks. It's just very difficult to actually have much creativity in the game at the moment. So I do think that's like a big part of it. Like the change in the expansion cycle is just impacting like how much enjoyment you can get out of a patch. Because I honestly, like, the Sunset Wanderers month was the most I've played Gwent, right? Like this one card, the meta was like changing constantly. Like people were putting Ivar in their decks and stuff like that. It felt really interesting, and it felt like there was a natural developing meta, right? Whereas like last couple of months, like when there's been expansion drops, it's more just like, oh, this card's pretty OP, I'm going to put it in every deck, right? And then it just kind of stifles the amount you can do. Like, I just normally by the end of like, obviously there's a decline like whenever there's a patch, but I feel like it's been sharper this time Like as Spyro mentions, like maybe not an overall view of figure numbers. I haven't looked, but certainly like just from the general consensus of what people say, right? Like people tend to be enjoying the game less. And people still watch Gwent because people like love Gwent, right? And people I think will always watch Gwent, but I'd imagine there's probably less people playing. Obviously, we don't actually have those figures, but Twitch is like a very hard audience, right, for Gwent.
I'll mention something that I've spoken a lot about on my stream, but I'll bring it up here as well. I think going back to what you mentioned about the expansion cycles, I was not a big fan of 6-month cycles because I felt like it was just there was so much dead time. Now I wouldn't mind so much 6-month cycles if there was more things in between, but it really felt like after like 1 or 2 months after the expansion, there was just nothing to do really for a while. And I do like the constant expansions every 2 months, but there is one big downside. I feel like CDPR have this. They only do 4 cards per expansion perfection. I mean, and in order to shake up the meta, it's quite hard to shake up meta with just 4 cards unless you significantly overtune said cards to try forcibly change the meta. And I think that's led to like pretty crazy power creep where cards like Mamoon are being printed and whatnot. And the problem with that is that a lot of these cards are so much more powerful than all the cards. It kind of invalidates all the cards. And I keep saying that it feels like the more cards they add to Gwent, the less cards it feels like there are in Gwent, because the new cards kind of say, okay, well, these cards are broken. If you don't play these cards, you just can't play the game. So you have to play a lot of the newer cards and the new decks. Otherwise, you just can't really compete with it. And it kind of takes away a bit from the deck building, but from the trying out different decks. Because in the beginning of the season, I was trying a lot of different decks. I was trying Revenants. I was trying so many different things. And it just felt like everything I played was it just couldn't keep up with the new cards. I tried Revenants. I just couldn't keep up. It just didn't have points. It just felt like I had to play the new stuff or there was just no hope. And I think that is a big problem which we currently face.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like want to. It is like a streaming conversation after all, but I do like that the 2-month expansion kind of idea. But like obviously the last 2 expansions have been complete balancing travesties, right? And obviously I don't really want to get into all the reasons that I think that, right? Because like obviously streaming discussion, not a Gwent discussion. But yeah, of course. The game has performed poorly in the last couple months because of the balancing. And even though the game is like technically maintaining viewership, there's also like obviously some delay where people are like, oh, I used to love this game, but I don't have my new game, so I'm going to keep watching this game, right? So there's a little bit of delay from the game being bad to the viewership dropping. And then obviously a game just maintaining viewership isn't exactly a sign of a healthy community. You know, that's usually a sign of a community that's starting to die, because you have to go from growing to not growing to shrinking in order to start shrinking, right?
Yes, I'll echo. I think the 2-month cycle, as a content creator, I prefer it. Going to Spirit's point, where if you only get new cards for every 6 months, after 3 months, even with bounce patches here and there, it's harder to think of innovative things. I will say there's gonna be a bumpy ride for the 2-month cycle, because it feels like, not going too in the Gwent, but it felt like every single snippet of this expansion was really meant to be all dropped at the same time. Where you get like a couple cards like, hey, like the first drop, you're looking at spell Scoia'tael, and like, this is garbage. And just like, and CBR is like, no, we're not buffing any of the spell stuff for Scoia'tael. Just wait. 2 months later, here we are, right? We have a really, really, really powerful spell Scoia'tael deck. It feels like this expansion wasn't really designed for the 2-month cycle. It was just one expansion that was cut up into 3. I like the direction, though, of these balance patches. They're getting heavier in between each month, but we're definitely in an up-down cycle. And not going, again, too much in the Gwent. Really hate Syndicate. I've hated Syndicate for the past 6 months, even though it was one of my favorite factions back in the day, because the coin mechanic back then was difficult to manage. Now, super easy to manage. But that's kind of a different thing. From a content perspective, though, I actually think Gwent's still very good for it. There's still a lot of opportunity, but it's trying to balance the goals of the content creators and how they feel about the game with that opportunity. Because if you hate making content for something, it's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to stay going. Now, I speaking as somebody who's taken advantage of this kind of content lull, particularly on YouTube, I've made a lot of progress. And I think that's actually a really low-hanging fruit for a lot of people. But it's also tough when you sit there and I queue up against Tunnel Drill and I'm like, look, I'm trying to pull off my shoot meme deck and I'm not in the mood to see a tunnel drill on the other side of the board right now. Anyways, you guys,
And yeah, like
Like-
you said, that's a very good point. It's like when content creator exodus has happened, like what's happening right now, it's an incredible opportunity for smaller creators to yoink those audiences, right? Which can like kind of make you believe as if a lot of growth is happening, because if you're a new streamer and you go from a 2-viewer Andy to 100 viewers in over the course of a month, you think the game's growing at a really fast rate, even though the game overall is shrinking hypothetically, but your channel might be just reaching that ceiling very, very quickly because that opportunity is there.
Fear, especially, any thoughts on that? If not, I can riff off of it.
Nah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like ultimately the success of Gwent content creation is tied to the success of Gwent, right? That's like the bottom line. So, like ultimately, if people aren't playing the game, naturally, you know, the game's just not going to grow as much. Like, is Gwent content creation dead? Of course, it's not. No, like as you say, there's never been a better time, probably if you're a new streamer, to start. To be completely honest, because as you mentioned, like on YouTube. I'm still uploading, but nowhere near as much as I have previously. But like Habla, Stop, Freddy, Trynet, right? And then you look on Twitch and there's like similar things, right? But does that mean Gwent content creation's dead? No, but it does ultimately mean, and this is something I had like a holiday away, right? And I was so focused, I was like, right, I must upload, I must Twitch. And then I was like, mate, I'm not actually enjoying the game very much. I came back from my week off and I went to play and I was like, do you know what? I actually don't really want to do this. Like, so for me personally, there's many reasons with like why I'm not enjoying Gwent as much. A big one is I've played the game so much, and actually as I've been playing something different, something I've just missed is like this constant feeling of improvement. Like I'm playing a new game, I'm learning every game. I don't have that with Gwent anymore, right? And that's just because I've played it for 4 years and I've played it an obscene amount in the last year and a half, right? So just because people are like stepping down from Gwent content creation or like taking a break, it definitely doesn't mean it's dead. It just means like I think me and Trynet are the two that come to mind, right? We just play the game an obscene amount that like when there's something new, you kind of like you hop on and you're like, oh damn, I kind of remember like what this is like to be playing like a game I'm super buzzed about. Which I still get really buzzed about Gwent, but like it's just not quite got the same vibe for me at the moment because I want to play bad decks, I want to make random decks, but I want to still be winning. I hate losing, mate, but I don't want to just play, you know, this random flipping relics deck. Like, nah, mate. I want to play King Pogna, or I want to play Shiru, whatever it might be. You know, I just want to be able to make a random deck and it to be good, but it's basically impossible to do that right now.
Yeah, I think it can be definitely really tough. I also think there's kind of the paradox of, or two other pieces that go into the Gwent content creation feel of, one, Gwent doesn't really support a lot of full-time streamers. There is not a lot of viewership. Like there are viewers that go around, but the difference between like a disguised toast and what Gwent's capable of is like night and day. There's, I think, what, us four and like just a couple others in the English community, if that. But a lot of other streamers also have like this Trynet, obviously. There's also the fact that other streamers have goals. If you want to go from Gwent to another game, and I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of how do you grow to become a bigger streamer? If your goal is, say, I want to have $100,000 of income per year, you can't. That is not sustainable in the Gwent community. How do you grow past that? So, for example, you could switch to a new game like Storybook Brawl. You just do that if you're burnt out as well. You might just be sick of the game. Try to grow in a different game, a bigger game, rinse and repeat. Then you have other goals from different content creators. Like Watchflake did an interview of him. His goal is to be a caster. So he's never going to be full-time Gwent, unless Gwent needs a full-time caster. He'll be hopping from game to game to game doing contract work. It makes perfect sense of his goals. People like Lionheart has a full-time job and has a very different goal. Never going to be a full-time streamer. Would he love to? Sure, but he has other priorities. Tia is a student, right? You have all these people with different goals, and I think it's tough when you start to see them all coming simultaneously. When it's a little rough, everyone else's goals take other priorities, and then you start seeing people leave. It's also on my mind lately as we all think about how to grow our streams, expand our content, while simultaneously a lot of people's goals aren't aligning with streaming as often.
Yeah, like I think it's a big deal, right? Like it's something I've been juggling and thinking about for the last 6 months, particularly. Like, at what point do I want to try and, you know, expand my content?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, like I had plans to do it next year. And I think you look at TriNet as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think with me and TriNet, it's necessarily we're playing Storybook Brawl because, like, you know, financially, like TriNet has said it himself. I said, like, financially, it doesn't make like any sense for me to stop playing Gwent, right? I'm not playing Gwent because I don't really want to play it right now. Like, I'm still playing it a bit. Don't get me wrong. I'm still posting on YouTube. But if I was playing Gwent every day, like I have been for the rest of the year, I would just be like not enjoying my life, right? And I sort of took a week away and reflected on that, and I was like, right, what would I prefer to do? Would I prefer to like continue to like grow my stream, have this monetary progress, or would I actually prefer to just be a bit more happy? And I was like, yeah, I think at the moment I want to be a bit more happy, right? Like, so for me, I think TriNet's the same. Like, you know, obviously starting in a new game, you've got that opportunity as well of like if you can get within this community when a new game starts, like it can blow up. And we've seen people in the Gwent community in the past be so successful. Look at Crokies, for goodness sake. He was on the bloody final of PogChamps the other day. And he ultimately left Gwent at some point to do that. So you've got Swim, Mogwai, like big people, right, that have left Gwent to go on to bigger things. Like, of course, at some point, if you're looking to do it as like a full time, that's like a thing. But I don't necessarily think that's like, for example, why TriNet and I have left. I think like left, you know.
Yeah.
It's just because I think the game is particularly difficult to play when you know you play it as much as we do. And that's something I'd love to ask you guys as well. Like I think Spiro in particular, like how do you manage like just playing the game all the time? Because obviously you play at a very high level. Like, is that something you find difficult or not?
It is challenging right now. Gwent at this point is it's there's not really much to do right now, especially without the because I'm a competitive player as well. But especially without the qual. I mean, luckily there's still qualifiers this month. It'll be the last one for a while. There is definitely a little bit less motivation to keep on the grind. I mean, I typically have like a high mental fortitude from like back in the day when I used to play Call of Duty for like much more than I used to play than I play Gwent currently. So I'm kind of used to this environment, so I can kind of stick through it a bit longer than most, I guess. But I must say, like, I'm really hoping that something changes in the coming months, like give me a bit more motivation to just keep on going, because I'm not sure if eventually if it's something that I can do forever if I don't have like a motivation or some reason to like wake up every morning and press the go live button. Like I need something to like keep me invested, right? And that's something that's currently, I mean, it is off season to be fair, so that is that's typical from this time of the year, I guess. But I think I feel like there's something a bit more to it than just that, but I just can't quite put my finger on it at this point.
So,
I mean, the answer is probably the botched balance, to be honest, right? But
Yeah.
like this is definitely a problem that a lot of creators, like even super big creators that have tons of freedom in game choice, like Summit 1G, for example. It's very important that these full-time streamer type people that stream for 6, 8, 12 hours a day have some sort of grind to go after. And you see this like somewhat often if you follow like their Twitter feeds. They're like, man, I don't really know what game I want to be playing. And they jump from game to game, right? And there's a lot of freedom in that, but it's still difficult to find that grind that you're enjoying and that you're actually willing to put in 100 hours a week doing.
Yes, I think that's really important. For example, I've been grinding Gwent since I really began streaming. And I look at you, Bushy, I feel like you have figured out a really nice balance of you play Gwent, but you also play other games on stream. And you've had that, I think, for a fair while now. Even though on paper, I bet you'd make more money playing Gwent, you're like, you know what? I have found the way to multi-game enough, probably to help you keep a little bit of sanity, play things you really want to play, while also balancing the financial aspects, that other hidden thing behind the scenes. And I wonder, have you found it to be useful, especially during like right now where the patch seems to be a little off?
So like financially speaking, I think about it in terms of like necessities and investments, right? So my necessity is currently, in order to maintain my lifestyle, make it so that I'm good to go and I can eat and I can pay rent and I can do all that, I need to play Gwent, and like sure that sounds like a little bit cold and like as if I'm just playing it for the money, but that's not even necessarily true, especially when I'm only playing it for 3 hours a day, right?
Yep.
And then when it comes to like the investment, I invest in my happiness by playing the other games and creating content out of the other games, and I invest in potential future growth by playing other games and enjoying those other games. And like Spessy said, you know, you can always pop off. Twitch has a crazy high growth potential because the discoverability is so god awful on this platform.
Yes.
It means that whenever you do get discovered, you really get discovered.
I think it's one of the paradoxes of Twitch, where it is whoever's the biggest gets all the attention, all of it, and you're ranked by highest viewership to lower viewership. Reason Gwent's a great game to stream most of the time, though I've actually changed recently a little bit. Usually it's just 10 to 25 channels. There's one page of them. You're going to be on it for your language. The moment you sign in and start streaming, you are a top 5, top 10 streamer for your language, including English. Like, that's insane discoverability. You go Fortnite, there's like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I think it's actually 5,000 channels average. You're never going to be seen. That also means two things. One, if you are discovered, become a bigger streamer, you get your 100, 200, 300, 700 person audience, you're not going to be shaken, right? If you're in Gwent. Likewise, you need to get discovered on other platforms. I know for myself, the more I stream, the more I value YouTube as a way to get discovered. Right now, 10 to 20% of my follows, even a couple subs, happen when I'm offline. People on YouTube being like, oh man, I love this creator. PlainTalkJon is clearly a streamer. Let me go down, hit that Twitch button, and give my Prime for the month. I'm like, that is the coolest thing. Come back, I'm like, I'm getting subs without even streaming. That's incredible. I hope more people do that. Just as a shameless plug. My shout out.
I see somebody in the chat saying that Gwent is too low to make money, and I mean, you don't know what you're talking about. Sure, it's not a super big game, but there's probably 4, 5, 6 people that if they actually truly do optimize it, they can live full time and be very, very happy with the income that they make off of the game. Sure, it's not a lot, but it is more than enough. I promise you.
I think full-time income is achievable. There's 2 other benefits that, for me personally, go through my mind. One, you run your own company, and that is, I know personally, I'm a believer that if you're gonna stream, you have to treat it like a business. You have strict hours. You gotta, if you can't make those hours, it's okay. You gotta change something. You gotta be thinking, how are you gonna pay all your bills? And you can make full-time income. Not a lot of people can. It's a small game, but a couple people can. But by being your own business, one, if you want to keep moving up in the streaming world, you potentially can. The most common thing is you pick a game, you get a core audience built that's a fan of you as opposed to just the game. You switch to a larger game, you keep your core audience, you're still discoverable because you have enough people to be on the first page. Rinse and repeat, you keep climbing up through games. This Guy's Toast comes to mind as somebody who did a good job with that. I think Scar did a bit of that too. So those come to mind. And also, for me personally, I'm a believer that streaming, the world of streaming has barely begun for what it's actually capable of. Because at the end of the day, streaming is running your own news, like your own television channel, for free. You turn on a camera, you just need a crappy mic and a crappy webcam, which are endlessly available these days, and you have your own television channel. So I think, even though gaming found that first, I think the potential here is barely begun. So you're right. Could you make more money going into a corporate job? Sure. Especially like in my case, I gave up a huge amount of my income to go do this. But I'm also feel that in the long run, I'm well positioned to do something really spectacular here instead of climbing the corporate ladder. Works well for me. Those are my thoughts on it. I don't know. Spiro or Spessy, have you any thoughts on what got you into streaming as opposed to the corporate world?
I mean, I was full-time teaching, right? Like, I was at university when I started streaming Gwent. It was just like a hobby. I would stream like during the summer months. I'd go back to uni. I wouldn't stream, right? And then I'd come back at Christmas time. I'd stream again a bit. And then I was full-time teaching in my first job when obviously lockdown happened. And then I just built a PC and started streaming again as a hobby. And then I was like, I guess rather than teach again for a year, because like I caught COVID in the classroom, right? I'm living with my dad. I was like, I could go back into another classroom, but it was just awkward living situation. I was like, to be fair, I could probably just stream full time, you know, and like commit to it a bit more. So mine wasn't as much of a decision. It would just sort of like happen, right? And it's something I always wanted to do anyway, really. And like to this geezer that's saying like, you should just like leave Gwent. You're just here for the money, mate. Trust me. If I wanted to leave Gwent, like I'd go teach, but like I'll be playing, if I was to blow up as a content creator and be like, have like 10,000 viewers, I would still be playing Gwent, mate, like for sure. Like I've played the game for so long, right? It's got a very special place in my heart. Like it's not about that, and that's exactly why right now I ain't playing Gwent, because if I was to play Gwent, I'd be sat there moaning and whining and whatever else. So like I'm just doing it for my mental health. Like I'm not here for the money, mate. Like if I was here for the money, there's other avenues I could pursue, right? I've got a degree in teaching, right? I will make more money doing that. Like it's not about that, man. Like I had to address that comment because it kind of irked me. Like we're all here because ultimately we enjoy streaming, but it does at some point reach that point where it goes from being a hobby to a job. And also as soon as money is involved and cost of living, all these sorts of things like rent to pay, bills to pay, it does of course go quite quickly from I'm going the go live button because I want to have a good time, or I'm pressing it because I have to. And because if you have to do something, like, does that mean that I don't enjoy it or whatever? Nah, mate, it's not. You're just like looking at it like with a very narrow point of view. You get me? Like it's not like you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, okay, this is my job. Like it's natural, right? Like if I want to maintain my income or improve my income streaming right now, I will play Gwent like as much as possible. I'll put as much Gwent content out, right? Like you're just kind of looking at it the wrong way, mate. Like it's not like that, mate. Like it just kind of irked me, this comment.
Beer, got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's. Sorry, I'll let you speak, Spyro.
I was gonna say I also kind of like stumbled into the streaming environment. It wasn't like an initial plan, and it quickly turned it into like after a while, streaming it becomes a job, and obviously you can enjoy your job as well, and you don't. But at some there will be days and times where you are kind of like okay, you obviously need to go to work. You have to get up. You got to get into routine. You got to hit the go live button, and it's not always easy to like fully dedicate to one game or one thing, and actually always enjoy it, right? Like everything you do in life, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days you're excited to go to work. You're gonna have days where you're not so excited to go to work, and getting the motivation to get yourself to voluntarily want to stream and find something you're passionate about is not always easy. That's probably one of the most difficult things about streaming, is finding that passion to always to be enthusiastic and want to do what you want to do, and not kind of just go, I mean, I guess I have to, let's just go live, right?
Yeah, I think
yeah,
go for it, Bushy.
There's always like this like weird thing that happens with communities, which I think it's probably all communities. I don't think it's just Gwent, but they're very tribalistic in that you play other game, you bad person. It's very like unga bunga jungle behavior, right? And like it's definitely frustrating to be like in Spessie's point of view or Trinet's point of view. He's gotten to the point where he's like banned the word Gwent in his chat or something, and it's completely understandable, to be honest, because you don't want to wake up every single day and go do something that you enjoy just to get like completely spammed, not necessarily harassed, but completely spammed with a bunch of nonsense about something that you've explained countless times before. And if they actually really cared to answer their question, they could find it out very easily. And on top of that, you don't want to be like patronized and lectured as to why you need to be playing this game, because otherwise you're a betrayer and you're a bad person, and it's just very, very frustrating. That in particular, obviously, like streaming has its frustrations, but that in particular, you to just have a whole group of people that's essentially dedicated to tell you what you need to be doing. It's ridiculous. It's so annoying.
I've heard the story so many times, so many different people where like you play a different game and there's just a barrage of people that want to come into the chat and say like, traitor, you betrayed us, you've left us, you're not playing Gwent. And luckily I haven't had to deal with it too much. I mean, I don't really play that much variety, so maybe I haven't exposed myself to too many circumstances where that can happen. But it does sound like something that's it almost demoralizes me sometimes from actually trying out other games more often, because I don't have to deal with a whole bunch of people coming to my chat and just and having the situation where I feel like being forced to ban the word Gwent just to stop this conversation from constantly having to happen. Sounds quite annoying for sure.
I think like this thing as well of like switching games, like ultimately if your aspirations are, as John's saying, to treat like your content creation as a business, you know, like shoot for the moon or whatever. Like ultimately, you know, as I say, your success is tied to Gwent. So if you're looking at Gwent and you look over it and you're thinking, okay, this game isn't, you know, going to the moon. Like, imagine if it would be amazing, right? I think it would be the best thing ever. And
Yep.
I thought for a very long time it would. But at some point, you kind of have to accept, like, all right, like if I look at my growth personally last year, like I went from basically having like 20 viewers to suddenly I gained what, like 2,500 subs on YouTube in like a month, right? When one of the expansions came out, and my growth was just mad and mad and mad. At some point, it's obviously going to slow down, and you have to like look. And if you're being honest, like, do I see myself playing Gwent in 5 years' time? Maybe not. I've already played it for 5 years at this point, right? So like, where are you going? So that does become a big bridge you have to cross of like, how am I going to transition from just playing this one game that people watch me for, you know, to playing other games where you see this natural dip in viewership as well when you change games, right? And there's no like definite answer to do it. Like, I feel like I should have been playing a lot more variety for the last year. Like if I go and look on like my Steam, for example, I looked at some games and I was like, Counter-Strike Go, last time I played it was like March 2020, right? Like I don't stream other games, whereas Bushy, you know, mixes it in. I know Trynet, you can see what he did with Storybook Brawl, where he was just playing Storybook Brawl after his Gwent streams, and then he was able to, you know, switch to just playing that more often as his only game that he's playing at the moment. And then you look at other people that what have they done in the past, like Crokies, Margwai, Swim. I remember, I believe both Margwai and Swim deleted every one of their Gwent YouTube videos just one day, woke up the next day and bang, they just started pursuing like another game entirely. So like as a content creator, you'll look at many people and they will start with one game, like Ludwig as an example, right? He started with, was it Smash Bros? And then eventually he branches out. So that is a massive question, right? Like, how do you go from being like this person that's found success in a niche to then expanding that out? And I think that's kind of like the $1 million question, really, right? Like, that is the big moment, I think, for a lot of streamers. If you're looking to do it as like a career for the rest of your life, right? Or as opposed to just something you can do for a shorter period of time.
Yeah. Can I actually ask one of you specifically that question, Bushy? Because I look at your content from while I'm trying to make my content, I try to keep up with yours because I think you set a good pace for what someone who's streaming and managing YouTube at the same time looks like. So I always look to you. I'm like, all right, Bushy's producing a video every day. I'm never gonna fall into that pace. Bushy's streaming, you know, X number of hours. That's roughly, you know, this is a all-in-one package. But from what I can tell, from an outside perspective, I see it looks like you might have some more room in Gwent to grow, but you're kind of there. You have one of the most popular streams. You have a massive YouTube following. How do you conceptualize where you want your stream to go? Because that is the $1 million question. What happens when you conquer a category?
That is the question that I'm currently asking myself on how do I grow my career, grow my stream, grow my channel. Obviously, I haven't figured it out yet, right? But I'm experimenting, which is very important to like essentially anything with any self-employment ever. You always have to experiment, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't. And essentially the idea is you miss all the shots that you don't take, right? So you just, you got to keep taking shots and hopefully maintain the discipline and fortitude and in order to actually buy yourself enough time to actually take all of those shots. And hopefully one of them sticks. One of the ideas ends up working. Currently, the idea I'm going for is seeing if I can transition into some sort of variety. You know, I'm playing through Ghost of Tsushima right now, which I'm having a whole lot of fun with. And even though like it's not great content, right? I can't honestly pretend like I would have like the whole category of Ghost of Tsushima come into my stream because I'm doing something so interesting that it's just impossible to not to watch. You know, I'm just playing through the game, but still there's growth potential there, right? There's people that would not have discovered my channel otherwise that are going to click into it and decide if they want to continue watching the stream as I go to play other games, right? But yeah, ideally when it comes to like these variety kinds of things, I think like planning is super important and coming up with some sort of idea or timing that works very, very well to make the content itself super interesting. So whether that be playing a game on release or collaborating with another creator or doing some sort of crazy idea like no hit runs or speed runs, which are obviously very, very popular on Twitch, right? It requires a good amount of planning and a good amount of grinding in order to actually like farm that interest, which, like I said, obviously I haven't fully figured it out yet, but I am in the experimentation phase.
That makes sense. Makes sense. You really, it also holds true for Gwent content. For anyone who wants to make Gwent content, you got to experiment. I know one of my series, Gwent related, that took off that really surprised me was reworking old factions that are forgotten by CDPR. And I just put one up. I ranted about how Harmony is an easy faction, like an easy mechanic to fix. Put it on. I'm like, oh, hey, it got really good viewership despite taking like 15 minutes of effort. Got about half as much as my regular videos. And I was like, oh, whoa, this is cool. And I think on a broader scale, I agree with you, Bushy, that experimenting beyond Gwent, trying to figure out what other games stick, what other formats to other games stick, is the big money question. I think Gwent has pretty much been determined as usually providing a deck seems to be the peak content in terms of people like this. What happens if you go to a single player RPG? What kind that's already been played through a bunch? How do you make new, unique, interesting content for that? It's not like you can give a new deck list, not like it's a bounce patch. How can you provide some value there? And if you crack that, all of a sudden, new genres open up, new people open up.
Yeah, like,
please.
Sorry to cut in as well. Like, it's like this is like the thing I've really been like asking myself for the last few months, right? Like, I was playing Witcher 3 on stream, and a big like mentality shift I had this year was whenever I'm streaming, I want to try and turn that into YouTube content, right? And when I was playing Witcher 3, I was like, oh, what could I actually do with this that's not already been done? And I was kind of like, not really sure there's that much. So then I just went back to just playing Gwent all the time and just sort of stuck with that. And then more recently, obviously, I've been playing a different game. And for the first time ever, I've uploaded 2 YouTube videos which weren't Gwent related, right? And that was like quite a big deal for me. But it's also a weird one because like it's just not going to do as well as your Gwent content, right? So it's still something I'm battling with. I think for me personally, a big thing that I'm planning on doing next year is I've got a big plan to do a football related content channel. So it's not even gaming at all. Something that I've got a big interest in. There's sort of like an overlap with FIFA, which I'm going to be playing quite a bit of. So for me, I'm going to try and target like newer games, but also then like still my plan is to still keep making Gwent content while doing other things, right? Now at the moment I'm not doing as much Gwent as I usually would, but I'm still uploading on YouTube. I'm kind of streaming Gwent every so often, so I've got my YouTube content, right? And I feel like if I'm just managing it like a little bit smaller, then I'm not going to get as burnt out as quickly, and I can hopefully like chill out a bit. But it's definitely a tough one, isn't it? Like how do you approach going from this niche to being able to survive? Because ultimately, if you're a Gwent streamer, we can all relate. You play Gwent and you're like, right, I'm going to do variety at the end of my stream because I'm going to have my peak viewership and then I'm going to bring them over to this new game. There's more chance that I'm going to hold that viewership, right? But ultimately, what you would love to be able to do is just start up your stream on a given day and start up Ghost of Tsushima, for example, right? That's kind of where you want to get to, right? But it's really not that easy. So I think a common approach is to play Gwent first and then switch. And I think that makes like a lot of sense to do that. Rather than just like what I've sort of been doing more recently, which is just starting up a game. But it's nice to be able to do that, right? Like it's balancing enjoyment of a game with which I think I'm probably not making the right, to be honest. I'm probably, I should be playing Gwent more than I am right now, but I'm being a bit lazy and I kind of just can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, to give you the opposite perspective there, Spessy, because you said like as a stream strategy, it tends to be a little bit of a better idea to play Gwent first and then go play your variety game, whatever it's going to be, which is certainly helpful for performance, right? Because your whatever your main audience is, it doesn't apply to Gwent necessarily, but whatever your main audience is, you're going to get more viewership there than what you're going to get on your variety audience, right? So, your performance on your variety is just going to be better. Obviously, the downside is your content for that variety is going to be like inherently worse though, because you're dedicating less time, less energy, and less effort to this other space that you're trying to grow in. So it's a little bit of a balancing act there, which is kind of tough because at some point you kind of have to say, okay, when do I pull the trigger? When do I decide to commit to going for this variety thing, because
Yeah.
until I do that, I'm not going to be able to commit enough time, energy, or effort to actually make this variety thing work. And we see Trinet did that, and I imagine, I'm gonna guess, I don't really know to be fair, but I'm gonna guess that it's actually somewhat working. Obviously, I don't think he's performing as well as he was when he was mainstreaming Gwent, but I don't think he's dying. I don't think he's going super far into the red for the sake of doing something that he's enjoying more here.
Yeah, the thing with Storybook Brawl is it performs like reasonably well on Twitch, but it's got basically no YouTube audience, right? Whereas Gwent's got quite a strong audience for both games.
Well, if you look at Storybook Brawl, it depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at this release from Gwent, then it doesn't really matter, right? You're gonna take a break, you're gonna come back. But if you look at it as here's a new card game that's really just copying Hearthstone's proven battlegrounds. The game itself is gonna be fun. And there's gonna avoid all the obvious pitfalls along the way. And you might dislike the art and such, but one of the big advantages it has is that it's free to play. One of the big issues card games have let me talk about two things, if you don't mind me rambling a little bit about the specifics. One of the big downsides to card games and esports is that they'll never take off because there's too much of a price entry in, right? Fortnite, if you want to play Fortnite, it's free. League of Legends, free. Dota 2, free. They'll have massive esports scenes. Most card games like Magic the Gathering, hundreds of dollars to get a competitive deck that's going to be obsolete in a few months, which is ridiculous if you want to build an esports scene. Storybook Brawl doesn't have that problem, which means its growth potential, both on the esports side and just bringing in new players, is really high, which is, to me, fascinating. That also means, though, that if it really blows up, it's going to blow up in a real way. People who identify the game as having potential, and if it does blow up, which means devs have to do a really good job, and they maybe have to improve the art style a bit, because I think it's a little sketchy in my opinion. The people who get there first on YouTube are going to be rewarded. Storybook Brawl, month after month, is getting more and more people into it, more and more viewership. Larger card game streamers are trying it out. It is a game with potential to be bigger than Gwent, in my opinion, at first glance. While the production quality is lower, the barrier to entry is also much lower as well. So if you look at it, if Trinet sits there and says, you know, I'm done with Gwent, I'm going to take a risk on this game, that's a very different move, and that is one that could pay off long term. You have to take a hit in the short term. But view it as events, it's a very different approach. It's kind of like you got to pick your poison. Make the jump, and say this is the point as Bushy indicated, or we're going to start doing this just to balance the two.
I must say that I think variety streaming is probably one of the most difficult things to do, because you have to have a following that wants to watch you for specifically you, right? If you want to be a variety streamer, then one day plays this game, one day plays that game, one day plays that game. There has to be an audience that wants to they don't care what you play, they just want to watch you play something. They want to see you, which is that's pretty difficult. I think I'm becoming like an actual variety streamer. I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to probably do in the streaming environment. Obviously, if there's a certain game you dedicate to, a game with like a multiplayer aspect or a competitive aspect, it's, I don't want to say easier, but it feels like it's you have an audience that wants to watch that game, and they go, okay, this guy he's an enjoyable person to watch. He's good at the game, or he's funny, he's whatever. It's easier to grow within an environment like that than it is to fully try and become a full-time variety streamer. I think variety streaming, just as a type of stream, is probably the most difficult, I think, to actually get into.
Yeah, and the I think the most important factor to becoming a variety stream, it actually has like literally nothing to do with you individually. I think it's everything to do with the community that you build, because I don't think you're ever going to reasonably variety stream unless somebody is coming to your channel specifically for your chats. You know, you go to XQC stream to spam fucking copium and all of the ridiculous emotes that you use to make fun of the streamer, right? You go to any top streamer and they have these communities that you want to engage in. You don't actually care what the streamer is doing. That's why React content is so popular, right? It got so big because people realized, like, oh, I don't care about this streamer. I care about watching this YouTube video with this chats, right? It has nothing to do with like XQC farting and slamming his desk, right? It has to do with the community that makes fun of him with the emotes and with the community culture there, right?
I think,
and it's really, really difficult to get to the point where you're carrying over enough of your community to actually reasonably variety stream.
I agree to an extent. I think community is definitely part of it. And as a streamer, I know I spend a lot of time thinking about what's right for the community, what's wrong for the community. How can I push us in a direction that I think in the long term will be good for everybody, or at least the vast majority of people. And certain people will enjoy my community. Like, for example, my community is really nice. We don't really swear at all. It's not a very trolly place. So if you really want something trolly to spam at the streamer, something negative, you need a different streamer. I agree though with something Spiro said in terms of like, I call the concept in my mind core audience. People that are invested in you. Whatever you do, they're going to be there for you. An easy way to tell all your core audiences. I mean, Bushy already knows when you're playing Ghosts of Tsushima, I think it's what you said the name of it is. All right, even how many viewers pop over there in my eyes? That's your core audience. Spiro, when you're playing Life is Strange, as many viewers as you kept, that's your core audience. Spessy, same thing. If I were to switch games, how many viewers I keep is the core audience. The people who will follow you wherever you go. And if you want to go variety, my opinion is via whether these people are invested in you or the community, this core audience that chases you, you need them to be big enough to support you for any game. I think the all-star right now in my eyes has always been Day9, who literally just he plays a lot of Magic the Gathering, but his streams, you go to a random game that no one's ever heard of, and he'll bring 1,000 people with him. Life Coach has the same deal. Whatever game he picks, he's going to have 1,000 people with him. So he'll always be able to do variety because just 1,000 people is enough for full-time income. The Life Coach obviously has a ton of money if you look into his backstory, but that's a little different. So I always think about right now when I'm growing is how do I know I have a bunch of viewers who watch me just because when they tune in and say, oh, my favorite Gwent, I want to watch Gwent right now. The best Gwent streamer right now is PlainTalkJon, but I want more of those. How do I make more of those people who are like, PlainTalkJon is my streamer. That's the community. That's the guy I want. That's the community I want to be a part of. So I agree. I think it's a bit of both for you, Spiro and Bushy. You matter, your community matters. Both are inflections of the same thing. You get both when you go to a stream. You get both when you get to Discord, both to the YouTube comments. You need to, if you want to ever really grow, you need that core audience to be as big as possible. Unless you're going to dedicate to a single game and always grind that game, which is easier because then you just say, oh, I just need to be the best at this game. So when people say, I want to watch Gwent, let's go watch Spiro. That's great. But if you go, like, I want to watch Spiro and while he plays anything, that's a very different person.
Yeah, that part of the audience is a lot smaller. That's for sure. And that's the difficulties moving over to other games. I think is because you move over to a different game or try a different game and instant shrinkage, and it's quite hard to carry it over to other games. And I think going back to what Bush was saying earlier about you've got to fully dedicate to a certain game. I mean, looking at other streamers that have been successful in moving over to other games, like for example, again like Crokies or whatever, they kind of were like, okay, they didn't like transition over. They just fully dedicated to one.
They just flicked that switch, didn't they?
Yeah, and they just, I mean, I know Crokies was streaming like 10 hours a day in the beginning, and he was just going at it. And I mean, now he's like the biggest Magic the Gathering streamer, like 3,000 or so viewers. But obviously, in the beginning, he had terrible viewership when he switched over because the core audience was Gwent. So when he first switched over, he had like 50, 60 average viewers in the beginning. And then over time, he got back relatively quickly, I think, but with a lot of work, though.
Yeah, and with what you said there, John, you did kind of change my mind. There are examples of people that do within themselves just create the content that that you go to a variety stream for. Another example I could think of is Squillakilla, who is a Souls game speedrunner or challenge runner, and he just does like this like very calm and collected like question and answer session while he's doing these very complicated Souls runs, and that within itself is just very, very entertaining, and you don't necessarily need to chat for it. But I do still think it's a significantly more likely outcome to have a chat carry your stream or a community carry your stream rather than yourself, because you kind of have to be like absurdly charismatic or absurdly interesting in order to reasonably carry that much interest from that large of a group of people. It's a lot easier to have a community that can kind of share the load there.
Yeah, I think for me, I still think the personality is important and how you represent, but I agree that very much with the community sharing the load. When people are viewing your chat while you're distracted, that indicates on the community. When they go to, example, your stream, Bush, I agree. When you might be just playing a Gwent card, they tune in for the first time, and see a bunch of monkey spam in the chat, they might be like, get me the monkey. and then they go and that's it, right? You didn't sell them. They wanted to be spamming the monkey chat and the monkey emote in your chat. And like that is a big part of how you sell yourself. And I also think that's why you have to be, from the moment, at least for myself, the moment I started streaming, my mind, as soon as I got like even the basics of streaming down, where I felt like okay on camera, community. How do I make the community have the best people I want to hang with, people that I think represent me well, and I want to represent them well? That's always on my mind.
Yeah, and I like the reason I say that is because I think it's super difficult to make sure that you're entertaining and enjoyable and fun to be around 100% of the time whenever somebody's going to jump into your chat, right? You know, it's very hard for you individually to be that nice. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit angry and you're going to call a new viewer. I won't swear. I almost swore, but you know, sometimes you're going to be kind of annoyed, right? And it's just really hard to be like that positive of a force and that's entertaining of a force 100% of the time, especially in a format like streaming, because streaming is, you know, live. It's not edited. You can't cut out the bad parts. You have to have the good part or all of the bad parts in there. And then sometimes, you know, maybe you're on, maybe you're doing some good progress, but for every other time when you're going to be slacking, you need that community there.
Best, any thoughts?
Oh, I think like it's actually really interesting because when I look at like being a variety streamer, I'm like, yeah, you just need to be like engaged. You need to be this, but like I said it last time with like the monkey chants, and Bush is like sat there leaning back in his chair, he's looking at his monkey charts in the chat, all proud. I love it. Like it's a massively important part, and I think it's something that doesn't maybe like naturally meet the eye as well, right? It's not the most obvious thing, but it's a really interesting point. Like I think myself, Twitch is still, even though I've been on the platform for like 4 years, still very foreign to me. Like I'm much more at home on YouTube, right? Because I watch a lot of YouTube content and have for a long time. So that's what separates Twitch, right, from YouTube. Obviously, you've got like YouTube gaming now, but live streaming and what Twitch probably excels at more over YouTube gaming as well as a platform is the chat, the community aspects of it, right? And there's lots of new things that are coming to Twitch. Like you've got the chants. That I know Bush has got. I know Rashid has like the first time viewer. When there's a first time viewer, it pops up. All these sorts of things hopefully can just help improve that sort of side of things where, you know, being able to spot those sorts of things and jump on that can be definitely very important. So that's really interesting. I think Bush has like just got so many like, you know, big brain points. It's cool to listen to. It's very interesting.
Oh, thanks, man.
Speaking of which, I love how my chat's just become a weeb central zone because I don't know how, I don't know why. I got nothing to do with weebs, but apparently I've attracted every weeb in the face of the planet to my channel. I don't know how.
And that's great for community. I'm sure a bunch of non-weebs are in there spamming a yaya because it's funny, right? And so you don't even have to be entertaining because your chat does it for you.
Well,
True.
I feel like it's also a curse though, because there are some big streamers who hate their community. But they keep going because of the money. And I just feel, I'm gonna hate my job. Am I gonna really take all the risk of being an entrepreneur or hate my community? Because I also think for me, on days when I have a bad day, my community is what picks me up, and I'm like, all right, I'm good. Or if I burn out really bad, they're all really forgiving, make me feel good, and I come back the next day and try to be even better. So I think it's a balance. So I hope you don't hate your chat, Spiro, if they're all going weeb. On the other hand, you could lean into it, show up with like an anime shirt. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think
Believe
this is largely due to Ander, wherever he is, but I think he's like secretly organized like a takeover on my stream and just cultivating all the weebs to take over the channel.
That's
Well-
like what Bush says though. Like if people are showing up to your stream for that community side of thing, you've also got like that fear of missing out. Like, oh, if I don't go on Spyro's stream today, I might miss out on like this, you know, whatever it is, you know. Like so, you know, it's definitely like while you can look at it in a negative way, like it's no coincidence that XQC is the biggest streamer, and like every time I click on his stream, his chat's just ripping him to pieces, right? Like, and he's getting tilted at the chat, and like that's, you know, like while he might say he hates his community, ultimately, you know, like it's kind of as Bush says, like if it's improving the channel, like that's kind of like part of the business, right?
It's definitely tough to balance though, because if the chat can find a pressure point that makes the stream bad, then that's obviously bad, right? You know, that's bad for the content, that's bad for your community. So ideally, you're just going to be able to, you know, not have a pressure point, but realistically that's that's not going to happen, right? We're all humans, we're all going to get, you know, pissed off about something, right? But I think the gains from a very engaged and active community, which sure, you can have a wholesome and engaged active community, it's just significantly harder to do than like emote spammers. And to be fair, emote spammers inherently aren't even necessarily like toxic. You know, the kind of toxic behavior that you see out of Twitch chat that can potentially ruin streams is in the veins of like backseating, in the veins of you know, like patronizing and things like that, right? Most people don't build their communities to behave like that. XQC is probably a little bit of an exception, right? But most people, when they build their communities, it's more so about like some complete uniformity, monkey behavior, spamming this specific emote for whatever reason, right? You know, streamer says something, you spam copium. Streamer says a different thing, you spam PogChamp, right? You know, that's the whole idea of the community, and hopefully that probably shouldn't hit a pressure point that ruins the stream. And as long as it doesn't, you should be good to go.
I think chat has nailed down my pressure point or trigger point to a science. They've got it down to a science, because every time there's something that they find it, they just find it. The best one is the best one they found is, but he won though. Like that phrase actually drives me through a wall. I can't stand it. Oh my god!
You sure you want to have that on the VOD? Officially confirm that gets under your skin?
Well, they know very well. They know very, very well. Holy crap, dude! They know.
Thing is though, like I always used to look at it like, all right, I don't want to like upset anyone in my chat, but now like it's also important to remember, like if I'm roasting someone in the chat, that is content, mate. You get me? Like people find it funny. So like if some guy pops up and says like some stupid thing that's tilted me, I'll be like, right, pause for a second. And sometimes like you might look back, like I'll even do it. I'll roast some guy, and then like 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, sorry, mate, my bad. But I was like, come on. Like it's still content in it.
Yes, you got to commit to the roast though.
It's true.
I think it's a balance. You got to figure out how you want to engage with your community and how you want them to engage with you. Because I think you don't have to end up with a emote spam chat if you don't want to, but it's active choices. For example, I think yesterday, there was a chant that was being really, really popular in my chat, which was !orb, and it would spawn a bunch of Peppy Ds chanting orb in a row. Orb, Peppy D, orb, Peppy D, and it was just spam of it. And I chose to end up removing it because it was so much spam that no conversation could happen. Downside, at least people that really like emote spamming probably join one of your chats. But alternatively, keep people who hate emote spam. They all get to hang here. We get to keep our different conversations going. Because our chat's pretty active in having a bunch of different more detailed conversations, which means emote spam is not good for facilitating that. So it's a balance. What do you allow? What do you not allow? How do you want that relationship to be? But be cognizant. I think it's key.
Personally, I tend to not like mass amounts of emote spam, because I still want to be able to like read the chat and actually like, you know, have someone ask me a question about the game. Say, okay, new player, I just did this and blah blah. What do you think about this? Or, you know, I like to engage with the chat, whatever. Sometimes when there's like a lot of emotes being spammed at once, and it's just spam in general, doesn't have to be emotes, can be anything. It becomes very difficult for me to actually read the chat. And there are times where I see chat just being a bunch of random spam, and then I kind of turn off from chat and just focus on the gameplay, and I kind of drift away from chat momentarily. And I prefer not to have that. So that's why I do tend to prefer not having excessive amounts of spam. But yeah, it's a bit of balance. Like I don't mind people having fun every now and then and going, you know, a bit spammy, but not like just constant, you know, just non-stop spam. At least from my perspective, that's how I kind of like to keep chat things.
Good.
If I was to like backseat streamer you here, Spyro, I know this is probably going to send you off the cliff.
Okay. We all backseat each other. I would be interested in backseat streaming everybody here and having them backseat.
I feel like your community just barely has a little bit too much like not monkey, you know. It has a little bit too much like
weeps
analysis, which leads to like these kinds of questions that I know frustrate you, you know, the backseating kinds of questions that you know, it's not always fun to have the whole chat think that you don't know what you're doing and telling you what you should be, what line of play you
I
should
don't
be
mind
taking, right?
backseating. I mind it when it's in like an insulting manner. That's when I start getting
Mhm.
really frustrated, right? That's
Yeah.
backseating is okay, but if it's the way you present it, which is how whether it's going to trigger someone or lead to a constructive conversation.
Yeah, I absolutely get you there. There's also things to like consider, like especially in the Gwent community, there tends to be like contextual language barriers where somebody who doesn't speak English naturally is going to phrase something in a way that sounds like they're demanding, like, "Oh, Mr. Streamer, you should have done this," instead of when they actually meant, "Why didn't you do this?" or asking it in question, right? And so even if you do make it so that your community only asks you like legitimate like backseating questions that aren't insulting, there's still plenty of chance for it to end up tilting you because of like phrasing or language barriers or something like that that can cause you to get tilted and make the stream worse, which obviously isn't good for you. It's not good for the channel. It's not good for the stream, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with it. It is sometimes something you got to try and try and figure out the person has like an honest question or honest statement or whatnot, or if the person is trying to active, because there are some people that active. There are some really well developed trolls that they find a way to if they find a way to actually troll you in a manner that's not quite obvious enough to like lead to warrant ban or timeout or whatever, but just enough to still frustrate you. You got to try to find out a lot of the time which one of those, which one are actually just as you mentioned, like a language barrier, or they just don't know how to phrase their sentences in a well structured way or whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely something that's quite difficult as streaming to try to figure out what are trolling comments, what are actual like legitimate constructive comments and questions and whatnot that you want to address. And it's definitely a difficult part of stream for sure, and not something that I definitely don't always get right. That's absolutely true, but something that definitely is something to look out for as a streamer.
Yeah, and that's like the balance that John was talking about with the community creation, right? You need to find that balance of what exact kind of community you want to be creating that's going to enable you to feel the best and create the best content. Because as long as you, in my opinion, as long as you aren't like completely off the edge and hating your life in the streaming chair, because you can't put the stream on pause and edit that part out later. You can't, go take a lunch break and come back later. You need to be there. Otherwise, you're ending the stream, right? So as long as you aren't off the edge and just angry and making bad content, you're good to go. And so you need to figure out how to exactly like farm up that community that's going to minimize that amount of bad behavior that you don't really want to be experiencing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's being conscious about the community. End of the day is a huge part of being a streamer. Just kind of summarize that all up. How do you guys deal with the different like basically burnout? I think that's one of the things that's kind of running through the Gwent community right now on this patch. Do you have any strategies you guys like to lean into?
Personally, I remind myself that I used to play Call of Duty for like 12 hours a day for like 5 years. And then I got, yep, this is nothing. Let's carry on.
All right.
I reduce hours. Like if I'm having fun playing the game, I stream for longer. If I'm not, I stream long enough to make a YouTube video and complete my obligations for the day, which again is going to sound very like financially distant, right? But ultimately at the end of the day, I do it for a job. Like sure, I still enjoy it. It's not like I hate this job or something, but if I'm not having the most fun with it and I can be having more fun elsewhere, I complete the obligations and go have more fun elsewhere.
That makes sense. I know for myself, my plan is because I got burnt out yesterday really hard. Just reduce streaming hours, reduce content creation. I was going too hard on YouTube personally, and because I was putting out on average like 60 plus videos per month, which it was a little too hard. So dialing that back. So it's just like for me, it's a dial back, but also think switching around games and such can also that.
switching games definitely helps you like just do something for yourself that's fun, and whilst also trying to I kind of view like streaming different game stuff as like sharing it with the core community, because I know some people do want to watch other stuff. They like there is a certain portion of my viewer base that obviously wants to watch me play other games. Like when I play Gwent, I actually have a lot of comments, people saying, play this game, why don't you play that game, why don't you try this game, why don't you play, like, people are actually interested in watching me play other games. And I kind of want to like just share every now and then, not just for my own sanity to play other stuff and have some fun, but also because I want to like share something with the core audience and play something else, even if it won't perform. If I know it won't perform very well, just for that like core 150 so viewers that want to watch something else or whatever, give them a little bit of break, change things up a little bit, and just give me a bit of a break every now and then. Obviously, it depends. I'm also very picky with my games. I don't play that much variety because honestly, I don't really play that much other games nowadays. So. I also do want to play games that I want to play personally. I'm not going to just play some I'm not going to go to Steam and go look up some random game and go, okay, that looks like it's a fun game to stream. Let's download and play it. And then half an hour into the stream, I'm like, yeah, this game kind of sucks. I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, and it's when it comes to like analyzing your core audience, it kind of matters to understand that some people like obviously just don't log off when you switch games, right? And this can be really easily seen. Like if you turn off your stream and turn it right back on immediately, you'll be down 500 viewers, right? Which just shows that people are like AFK, counting for the concurrent viewer feed or something. So it's a little bit tough to figure out what your core audience is after you switch from your main game to a variety game. But sorry to interrupt, Spessy.
No, you're fine, man. No, like I think managing burnout is probably, as you say, like it's very good to probably realize ahead of time, because I think what happened with myself was, again, I was like streaming every day. I was like, I was bare committed. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stream this time. I'm gonna target these hours. I'm gonna upload these YouTube videos with this title, and it's gonna be great. And then I went on holiday for a week, and then after like a week of just like getting away from everything, I got back and I logged onto Gwent, and I was like, oh man, I think I want to stream, but like I kind of like don't want to play the game right now because I was just so burnt out, right? But you've got to bear in mind, I was like in June, for example, I think it was maybe May, I was playing Gwent for like 10 hours a day on stream. I was logging off, and then I was sitting in a call with like Freddie, Green Knight, and Paya, like prepping for Masters, right? And that was sometimes like 6, 7, 8 hours. So I was like, and I would sit in Discord calls watching people play Gwent every night, right? Like I was like, all my social life basically at that point, because obviously a lockdown, I wasn't going out, was Gwent. So I was streaming Gwent, and then like when I was socializing, I was watching Gwent. So like I completely, and I was still playing Gwent.
Especially, were you dreaming about Gwent as well?
Probably was, mate. So like I just completely went off the rails, where I got too burnt out, which is why now I'm taking like this sort of month where it does feel like it's a little bit worse, where I'm on Thursday, for example, I streamed Gwent, and I think I did on Friday as well. I made like 5 YouTube videos, which I'm like slowly uploading, and then probably in a few more days, I'll stream Gwent again, right? And to be fair, should I stream Gwent a little bit more than I am right now? I probably should. I'm being a bit lazy, but I also don't think it's a bad thing, because I'm having fun doing something else. People are still watching. I can sort of, finally like commit to a different game, which has been quite difficult for me to ever do. There's not been a game I've actually wanted to commit time to. And I think moving forwards now, when a game like FIFA comes out, which before Gwent, I'd play FIFA every year, right? Like I will play FIFA on stream, and I'm actually going to start my stream now. If I want to play FIFA, I will start my stream with FIFA, whereas before I would always stream Gwent first, right? But I'm going to slowly try and move out of that. Moreover, if I don't want to play Gwent, I'm not going to play it. And I think that's like for me going to be quite important, because you got to bear in mind, I'm a massive Gwent fanboy. Like I'm fully addicted to the game. But right now, like it's just it's a good time for me to take a break, so that I can come back more refreshed, right? Like I feel like I've burnt the candle too far, where actually an extended break for me is the best way to probably manage that burnout.
Makes sense. So let me ask another question, because there was a small list of questions I added at the start of this. How important have you guys found that using other social media platforms besides Twitch is the growth in the long run? How important is YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, etc.?
For Gwent specifically,
just for your
I actually don't think it's super important.
Interesting.
Because Gwent is a complete golden goose when it comes to Twitch directories. especially right now. If you're a new streamer and you want to become a relatively big streamer, right now is a really good opportunity. Go stream when trying it with streaming. Have a good mic, have a good webcam, consistently do it, and you will find success. Assuming you're reasonably entertaining, right? But for like literally every single other game, you kind of need YouTube. And on top of that, when it comes to living full time, because I'm assuming if you're trying to become a full-time streamer, you're trying to make full-time money. And at the end of the day, if you want to do that, you kind of need YouTube. Because for me personally, YouTube is over 50% of my income. It's like 60 to 70% of my income. And I started on Twitch. I started YouTube an hour, or not an hour, it's like several months late compared to my Twitch stream, right? And it still grew faster, makes more money, and performs better than my Twitch stream does. So it's pretty important that you utilize especially other money-making platforms, assuming you're trying to go full-time financially with his job.
Yeah, like YouTube was like the massive sort of engine behind my growth last year, really. Like when one of the expansions came out, I think it was the Master Mirror one, I posted quite a lot of videos that did really well. And then loads of people were like, oh, okay, I've not seen this guy before, right? So definitely think YouTube is a key part. Don't know if there's anyone that has an Instagram. Maybe John, you do have a Gwent Instagram. I've been thinking about starting an Instagram, but it'll more be like a personal thing, right? To be honest, it's just a content creator. I don't think it's going to help you grow anything. Obviously, TikTok, we're all, probably our game as well. The audience is a bit too old for that to be one. But if you're playing something like Fortnite, for example, I'm sure like TikTok can be an absolute huge engine for like growth vehicle.
To be fair, I do see that like average viewer age, at least on my channel, is somewhere around like 20 to 30, which is definitely in TikTok range for sure. So that might be something.
Maybe.
Bushy,
I do feel like TikTok's younger though.
If you're older than 18, you are officially a boomer.
I wanted to say real fast that I think YouTube is the key, and I agree with you, Bushy. I make more money on YouTube than Twitch subs, which I think surprises people, because I feel like everyone looks at it. Yeah, if you're on Twitch, you're like, this is the no, it is YouTube, because YouTube is this perpetual living stream of yours. You just put the best parts of your stream, you put it on a VOD, and you get the best stuff immediately delivered to you, and it's always ticking. And once you have a library of hundreds of videos, the Gwent videos expire pretty fast in terms of relevancy. You're getting all of this ongoing like momentum that's always 1 million copies of you streaming to 1 million different people. Pretty epic. I know Twitter is another route I'm trying to grow, but it's still too small right now to really see how impactful it is. But I've been working hard at it.
I mean, Twitter, I think Spyro as well will know, coming from the Call of Duty community, Call of Duty has a massive community on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So you would be able to grow your Twitter massively. Gwent, not so much. There's not like a Gwent Twitter community, really, to be fair. So I think definitely depending on the game, but ultimately YouTube is, no matter what you're doing, going to be the biggest, because it is the biggest platform, social media platform for content creation, right? And as you say, it's like you can turn your Twitch streams into videos. It doesn't take that much effort, right? It's time consuming, sure, but ultimately the approach I've taken this year is if I'm streaming, I can turn that into a video most of the time, right?
Twitter, Gwent is so dead. I got the 2,000 followers from Call of Duty and 400 from Gwent.
My Twitter account exclusive to Gwent is 1,200 or something right now. So it's really not super popular, to be honest, but there is a community that does exist
it's
there.
Worth having, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crap, I lost my train of thought. Where was it? Something Spessy said I wanted to comment on.
Call of Duty community?
No.
Twitter?
Twitter. Before that, did you have a comment? Maybe I'm crazy.
YouTube, Twitter. Yeah, I don't know.
TikTok.
Oh my god.
Instagram?
I don't know. My mind had a good point, and then it went, it's way out there. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. All right, controversial take. all of my Twitch streams these days, I'm structuring them so they only can be YouTube videos. Every single minute, I'm thinking like, if you were to say, John, what are you streaming today? I'd be like, I have 3 decks prepared. All of them are original deck lists. Everyone will be a YouTube video. As long as, and I'm hoping 2 or 3 will work, because the one that worked don't work and it bombs, crashes, and burns, ends up being a pile, won't make YouTube. The other 2 will. Or I'll say, you know what we're going to do today I've been doing YouTube community polls. Saturday, we're going to do a YouTube community poll review. That is going to be a 30-minute video. And then I'm going to play 2 decks. Hopefully one of them works. That's another video. I will say right now, how I've done it is just everything I do is just like, how do I turn this into a YouTube video? This, another YouTube video. So I found a lot of success focusing YouTube and then having your Twitch stream be always designed in a way that can easily go there. I think it was Ludwig who had mentioned that in one of his presentations on streaming.
And to be fair, John, I think you pointed this out. You probably overdid it because, I mean, when it comes to like farming the YouTube algorithm, the almighty YouTube algorithm, there's generally like 2 strategies that work somewhat well. One is completely and utterly spam videos. Like I'm talking 7 to 8 a day. And you see really big media companies employ this strategy. I can't think of any examples right now, but they just spam them out there and hope that one hits.
Channels and stuff, right?
Yeah, they just spam them out there and hope that one of them hits, and then they gain some traction through that. The other method is like the more quality approach, where you post once every 1 to 2 days, and that like just optimizes the engagement from every single one of your subscribers and followers.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I think I found, because there is a lull, right, as a lot of people stopped producing Gwent content, by trying to be the one person who'd pick it all up, I think my growth rates and subscriber count month to month is insane. I don't think there's anyone even close right now. Now, mind you, if everyone picks up Gwent again, that gap will shrink. I think part of it also is, if there's an opportunity when there's a lack of content, a lot of Twitch streams become YouTube videos. So if nobody's streaming on Twitch, Gwent, lack of YouTube, you fill that void, then it's good. But I did overdo it on more, not so much on the rate. If I could keep the rate going, I probably would, but I mentally can't handle it. So
yeah, and like, to be fair, like the growth that you were experiencing wasn't exactly sustainable, right?
Yep.
Obviously you weren't going to continue at that pace. You just experienced accelerated growth because you were reaching the ceiling of the space rather than, like growing with the space, right? And so obviously your experience is a little bit different because you were starting from a relatively low point, and you did lots of planning, and you did lots of planning. Yeah, literally just planning. you spent a lot of time, and you figured out what you needed to do, and then you executed, and because of that, you were able to reach the ceiling or come close to the ceiling very, very quickly, right? But it's obviously just not sustainable, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think like on Bushy's point as well, like as I mentioned, like last year I had like a month where I think I gained like 2,500-3,000 subs in like 1 month on my YouTube channel, where like I was working really, really hard, and I had that motivation to like wake up every morning. I was like, bang, 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 I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But like at some point, it's put like the amount of effort I can put in right now to grow my channel, like it feels like I can put all this effort in for like not as many results as I previously would, right, for less effort. So, and that's just because Gwent ultimately has a ceiling, right? Something I've spoken to Spyro about quite recently. Like there is a clear ceiling in Gwent where like a YouTube video is very rarely going to go beyond 20,000 views. You're very rarely going to have a Twitch stream over 1,000 views, right? Like it can happen, but it's not going to happen that often, right? So at some point, like the growth is going to stop, and that's when that question asks us like, what next, and how do you go? Either the game like keeps growing to a point where like if the game was to blow up, we'd all be in a fantastic position, right? Where like you'd be able to get a lot more views, or you begin, if you want to continue, growing your channel, like at some point you have to ask that question, like where next, right?
Yes, I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was definitely a
You
curvature.
guys and all your plans are starting to make me worried because I don't have any plans.
No, well, sorry, Spyro. I think Bushy's got plans. I know I got plans. I think Specy's got a couple plans up his sleeve right now. Maybe it's time for you to put in the plotters.
When I stream, I just stream. I don't really like think about the plan of it. I just kind of go live and then go, okay, time to stream.
No, I think for me, I've always, from the moment I got into the Gwent streaming, which is an accident, a happy accident, but an accident. A random child, so to speak. And I've always been thinking, if if Gwent wasn't such a loaded game with absurd stats for discoverability, absurd potential for viewership at a quick rate, I would have never streamed. I only stuck with Gwent because I streamed it as an outlet because I had a different project that was failing, and then this took off. But because I know how competitive streaming is, I'm always planning. I'm always scheming. I'm already thinking about, okay, in 3 months, John, you're going to scale off. I'm going to have from my 1,000, 2,000 of subscribers a month will eventually become 500. Just you'll hit the ceiling of Gwent. And I'm hurling towards that. I confess that I do not want to always hit that ceiling, cap out at whatever the max Gwent income is. It's not going to be very high, and I don't want to just stagnate there. I can already tell you that I'm thinking about how do I already begin my process of providing, how do I want to evolve, add new content, and change to make sure that that growth continues well beyond just what Gwent's capable of. Not that for people listening that I'm going to abandon Gwent, but I have my plans and my plots and my schemes, so stay tuned.
Is that like abandonment I'm hearing, John? Is that traitors?
No, I think so. I mean, I'm happy to give some thoughts. So
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
Okay. Because that's about to happen. Don't throw me under the bus, Bushy. Because I think one thing that happens for streamers, it is that the obvious natural progression. I have a different idea in mind. The progression is I build up that core audience. We're talking about it earlier. Then I switch to a bigger game. I keep 50 people with me, but now I'm discoverable because to be in the top 20 results is 50 people. And you just throw away 70% of your community, 80% of your community who doesn't like the new game. You keep that small niche that's like, I like you, or I like this community, I want to keep that feel. And you go to the bigger game, you crush that game. And you're in position, you have the core audience, you're discoverable. You already know how content creation works. Whatever you made for Gwent will probably work for Legends of Runeterra, work for Hearthstone, or work for Magic the Gathering. And you rinse and repeat that, slowly moving up from game to game. The harder when you go from genre to genre, like as Bushy had indicated earlier, Ghost of Tsushima, like you can't make a Ghost of Tsushima deck guide or a patch update. It's a single player game. What works for RPG content? No hit runs, speed runs. Well, can you do that? That's a time commitment. But if you're good at that, then you go from that RPG to Witcher 3, no hit run. Bloodborne, no hit run. But on my mind right now, a lot is I don't want to burn through my community. I'm very focused on what I call the Plain Talk family. How do you pivot in such a way that you don't lose a bunch of them? Expand what you do.
I don't think you can avoid losing about, like, if you switch games, you will lose like 80-ish, 70, 80% of whatever, for 70%, 60%, whatever the number is of the community, because a lot of the community most of us have started our streaming on Gwent, have stuck with Gwent for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. We've built an audience that clearly likes Gwent, and they clearly will continue liking Gwent, and they might like you as a streamer within the Gwent scene, but at the end of the day, they want to watch Gwent, right? So unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to take over a significant portion of your content. You're going to take over like 20 to 30%, if you're lucky, of your community to wherever you go, and I don't think there's a way around that, really.
I think the way I think about this is, how do I make it so that I carry over enough of the community so that the community stays intact rather than completely fracturing and changing into something that it wasn't before? So how do I maintain whatever that number is, whatever that amount of people is, so that the community stays there and so that monkeys keep getting spammed? And if I can do that and I can transfer it to another game, then people from that game can then discover it, right? Rinse and repeat, you're going to carry over 30% of those new discovered, right?
You have a stream goal every stream of how many monkey emotes need to be spammed on that stream. All right. And that's what you do to make sure that the monkey emote is spammed everywhere you go. There we go.
True. That's smart. I like it.
I think I want to say that, yeah, I think being able to keep that community feel is key from the get-go, right? You don't want to lose the monkey. And it's also like, as you mentioned way earlier, Bushy, like that is the impression of your community is gonna, part of the selling point of your stream is your community. So if you go to a new game, you want your community to sell. There's only one monkey streamer that I'm aware of, and it's an epic thing. So when you go to a game that no one, someone randomly clicks on your stream, they see the monkeys, they're like, I want to be a part of that. The thing on my mind is, it's actually very similar to what Spessy is thinking about with the sports IRL channel, where if you do, I wonder, like, so most people say, like, if I'm going to play Gwent, I'm probably not going to dedicate much time to Legends of Runeterra, right? I got my card game of choice. Or maybe I only really, and a lot of people just play one primary game at a time. You play League of Legends, you probably play a lot of League of Legends, very few other things. There are some people that multi-game from game to game to game, but I feel like they're less likely to say, oh, you know, I play this very niche game, nobody streams it, I'm not going to go watch the one streamer doing it. But I'm really interested in the IRL stream, something that's not gaming. Can you pair gaming and not gaming together? Because you can keep most of your gaming audience, but you'll lose some as you do the not gaming stuff. But you still keep that core, you still have that second channel that isn't going to interfere with the first channel. Keep the content coming there. Can you balance them both? And does not seem going to be like, oh, you're switching to Legends of Runeterra because it's bigger. It's like, no, I'm doing sports or something else. The thing I'm interested in right now is finance. Can you provide both? I don't know. That's on my mind. It's on my mind.
I mean, there's significantly less like friction with switching from a game to like just chatting, for example, because I mean, presumably everybody understands the language you're speaking, right? So it's easy to understand just chatting, right? But it's not necessarily as easy to jump into the middle of a game playthrough that you've never watched before, right? There's a lot of friction there that makes it difficult to actually cross over. So there's a reason why just chatting is like the most popular category on Twitch, right? It's very, very easy to transition into that with not a whole lot of friction, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Though it is kind of an abyss of the moment you move in there is the moment you have to think about every other social media platform. There is no more, even 50 people get, like, if you're hopping game to game, you can hold your 50 viewers seat onto the front page for hopping from Gwent to Legends of Runeterra. Just chatting is an abyss. The moment you hop in there, it's the moment all your content and focus needs to be everywhere else but Twitch. Kind of the paradox of that.
Yeah, and like I don't think you're gonna grow a lot in just chatting, but my point more so being is it's super easy to transition to just chatting. You're not gonna lose a lot of viewership by doing that.
I'm with you. There was another question that was asked. I think it was, I don't remember. It was on my, asked some YouTube community for a couple of questions. And somebody once asked, is there an end to Gwent content? Is there a moment where you're just like, everything has been done? You think yes? Okay, tell me. I was a big fan of.
Yeah, the game's not going to be around forever, right? Like,
that's one way to phrase it. Yeah.
Like at some point, yeah, like the game's going to stop being supported. Like, look, I mean, Artifact lived a much shorter lifetime, right? But like that category is 0 people streaming it. Inevitably, in 50 years, is there going to be people streaming Gwent and watching Gwent? It's incredibly unlikely, right? Beyond, you know, it's so ultimately at some point there will be. How long will that be? That's up to CDPR, how much they support the game. I mean, if we look at it objectively, if you look at CDPR as a company, how much money Gwent makes them, it is basically a drop in the ocean, right? Compared to like their other projects. So ultimately you have to ask those questions like, how much is Gwent getting supported? I think probably quite a key thing to keep your eye on is like the esports scene, right? As long as there's a supported esports scene, it would suggest that CDPR have plans of continuing to support the game. You've got things like The Journey, which have been, obviously making more money for the game. But if you watch the CDPR like financial reports, Gwent doesn't even get mentioned on there, right? So that should probably tell you that it's not the highest priority for CDPR. So ultimately, at some point, it wouldn't be that surprising. Now, having said that, it's also very important to remember that we've just had Cyberpunk, which didn't exactly pop off. There's quite likely to be another Witcher game in the works in the somewhat near future. There's a Netflix series, which obviously can bring like a big audience in to the Witcher card game. So, like, is there going to be an end to Gwent content creation? Yes, there will be. Is that like in the near future? No, but like I don't think it's that far away, to be completely honest. Like, I'd be quite surprised, like, if in 5 years there's still like a buzzing esports scene for Gwent, right? Like the prize pools have dropped dramatically. Of course, Masters 1 was like quite ridiculous how much, but all you have to really look at is prize pools. I think that's quite a good indication of like of how much support the game's getting. So I guess eyes on. I don't think next season's been confirmed yet. Like I think it's probably safe to assume that there will be like another season of Gwent esports. I'd be very surprised if there isn't, but like ultimately at some point, like when do you guys think, how long do you reckon Gwent's got left? I reckon it's got like at least another 2 years. More likely, I would like to think a lot more, but like
Honestly, I don't know. This is a pure guess from my point. It could be a year, could be 5 years, could be 10. I don't know. It all comes down to how much CDPR are wanting to actually invest in it and how much they are going to go for it. I mean, if they release if there's another Witcher game, and that also has a Gwent mini game within it, that could help have an influx and back into Gwent and try inject
Definitely.
some
Mhm.
viewership back into game. And maybe there'll be a Gwent scene within the next Witcher game, and then it'll drive viewers back to Gwent. I'm not entirely clear, but we'll see how it goes. I guess I do think there is probably an end to it eventually. Personally, I would hope that end would not be too soon,
Mhm.
but we'll have to see what happens, I guess.
I'm gonna read into this commenter's question a little bit more because I don't necessarily think his question was when will CDPR stop supporting the game, because obviously when that happens the game dies, right? The content dies, the game dies.
Mhm.
I think the question more so is on a month-to-month basis, when do you run out of content that you can reasonably create? You know, like when balance changes come out, do you run out of decks faster? Do you like how long does that take in order for you to actually run out of content? And for that, I don't, unless they really mess up the game, like they have to super screw up the balance in order to make it so that there essentially isn't a skill gap and it's more of, you know, a plain flip RNG simulator, which, to be fair, the last couple expansions came kind of close to that. To be fair, but they didn't quite get all the way to that point where the game had no skill gap and no skill potential and no interesting play ability in order for you to actually create that content. So my answer to that question would be, unless they really mess up a balance patch, I don't think you're going to run out of Gwent content in the meantime.
I mean, for me personally, how I do content is like the first week, maybe two, depending how much content there is of the Gwent expansion or patch, whatever, is full content creation mode, new decks, new videos, new decks. And then after, it kind of feels like this dried up of new ideas and stuff to explore, then I go switch over to competitive mode and I start, grinding the ladder and climbing. So that's kind of my cycle of content every month. Is first couple of seasons content, new decks, fun stuff, memes, whatever, and then transition over to competitive, climbing.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's exactly the point, right? You're gonna run out of new decks quickly, but if you have no skill gap and no skill potential, you don't have that long-term content creation in the form of competitive plays, right?
Yeah.
The main man Devil Driven mentioned draft mode as well, which like I think is like a really good point. Like for me personally, last month I hopped on draft mode a couple times towards the end of the month. I actually had like a really good time, but like it clearly needs a lot of work still. It's actually something I'm looking to hop back into this month as well. Like if there's that alternative to, if the, constructed meta isn't that enjoyable, if there's a viable alternative game mode, preferably for me personally with some kind of like competitive nature, because that's what like I need in a game, right? I need that feeling of winning and competitiveness. Like if there's some kind of reward system or ladder system, whatever it might be, right? Like that would be great for me. And like I do personally feel like draft mode is the thing that Gwent has the most untapped potential in. I personally think it's a massive improvement on arena mode. But ultimately, there's no bloody audience for it. Like
The
I
problem
posted a draft mode video. It did really badly, right? Because no one's really interested because they've already got this preconceived idea that it's bad, which is
The
kind
problem-
of fair. But like,
my issue with draft mode, and I said this the day it first came out, is there's nothing really to work towards. There's nothing. You play it for fun, cool. You play like casual, but it doesn't keep you engaged long enough, because after one or two games, you go ask yourself, okay, why am I playing this again?
right, but there is a big
Yeah.
improvement in it now because they've changed it where you can change your deck throughout the draft, right? Which is a step in the right direction. Like it's not like you press the draft button and then you're done and you suddenly, oh, I kind of want to draft a new deck, right? Like you play a game and then you tweak your deck and then you tweak it and tweak it. So like every game you play, you're tweaking your deck. So there does have like at least, some reason to finish the draft. So that's a great step. What else does it need? Well, it needs
I
improved
feel like it
logic,
needs
better
some kind of
packages,
reward
and
system
some
as
kind
well.
of reward or ladder.
Progression
Yeah.
system, something to progress towards, some kind of
Mhm.
Yep.
tree to unlock, I don't know, something to work towards and go towards. Like when you play an RPG game, right? Like just a single player game, you are constantly working towards something. You're constantly improving your gear, getting new weapons, getting new skills, leveling up, blah blah. You're progressing towards something. That's kind of what keeps a lot of people hooked in RPGs, is that progression system, right? That's what makes RPGs different than just an open sandbox game. Is there is a progression system. And I feel like with draft mode, there's nothing to progress towards. You play it as a casual game, and then after a while, you just go, okay, I'm bored. Let me go back to rank play because I'm not getting anywhere in this.
Let me jump in here because I think, well, I want to answer. I'm going to quickly 2-sentence shot the other 2 questions I missed, and then I'll hop in on the draft mode. Will Gwent go anywhere anytime soon? Actual the game itself, no, as long as it's profitable with the Witcher series. They're building out a Witcher universe. Time has never been hotter for good fantasy series to really make a push, as to my Game of Thrones. As long as Gwent is even moderately profitable, they'll keep it around as a marketing gimmick, and it will not go anywhere. Might lose less and less support, might see return of old journeys instead of new ones, but it'll still be here. Second, as for Gwent content, as someone who's not competitive, I could always get into the competitive world. I could riff off of Bushy's idea of reviewing people's gameplay, and honestly, I put out nearly 70 videos in the past month when people didn't really like the game, so no, there's no end to the content. As for draft mode, which is actually a really important thing, Spiro, I think you bring up a good point with the progression. Now I'm slowing my pace, my tone of voice here, where in Magic the Gathering Arena, you're working to unlock cards. In Legends of Runeterra, it's all about unlocking cards. Gwent's really generous. Most people have all the cards they want for 1 or 2 factions, if not a complete collection. What I think you'll see CDPR eventually do is once they feel like it's fun, when they fixed it and they say this looks good, they'll add in a ranked mode. The fact that it is currently free to play, to me, indicates draft is not going to be this mode of collecting cards like other games. It's going to be its own competitive beast. And the moment you get bored of grinding the ladder with the competitive decks, you pop over to draft, you get that same exact ranked experience with the competitiveness, and the rewards are titles and reward points at the end of seasons. That's, in my opinion, where the future of draft is going.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it is still called a beta, but it kind of seems like the game in general is just getting like very, very slow support, and things that aren't instantly received like super, super well are kind of just put on the back burner for like extremely long times.
Yeah, and like when draft first came out, I was playing it all the time, right? But like if you see it not getting that much support, like you're not exactly that inspired to continue going, right? And I mean, as I say, I'm hoping that if like some content creators, I'm going to start trying to play draft mode more often, try and give more feedback, those sorts of things, we could get it to like be pushed in that direction, right? Because ultimately, it probably is very low priority because there's not that many people playing it, and also just from a content creator, like I can try and make a draft mode video, but it's going to perform a lot less than some flipping low effort like deck I can just like make, right? Like I can make a flipping Arch Griffin deck and make a sick thumbnail, make a cool YouTube title, and it's going to get a lot more views than it would doing like a full draft run, right? Where like I edit it and do all this sort of stuff, right? So it's one of them ones where like if more people were to play it, I'm sure it would, but clearly progress in Gwent in terms of like these updates isn't exactly like the fastest, right? That, you know, doesn't look like there's the largest team, and that's just like naturally have to prioritize certain things. We also, like someone mentioned in the comments, like this golden necker thing, whatever is going on with that. I think SpyroZa mentioned on This Week in Gwent that it's like the scope of it has been increased, which kind of like sounds familiar to Thronebreaker, right? Like that's what we had with Thronebreaker, where it was just going to be like a mini game within it, and then it turned into its own full-fledged game. So be interesting to see what happens to that for sure. But I think like definitely an alternative game mode, a real alternative game mode, is absolutely crucial for times like this when people are a bit fed up of the meta, to actually keep people playing Gwent. Because right now, you know, why would I play draft mode? As Spyro says, there's no real incentive.
I agree. I think in the future, if Gwent's going to survive, it needs a good ultimate or alternative mode, and seasonal absolutely is not cutting it. Most people don't play seasonals based on the polls I've done. Like 75% of people rarely or never play it. So you need the alternative mode. You need the mode when you hate the ladder, you hate queuing up, that you click and you say, all right, we'll go do this instead, and have a good time with it.
Yeah. Draft mode is usually that mode, and honestly, that probably does just need a little bit of improvement.
Let's see. Give me one moment. I'll pull up another question real quick, since I think we hit this topic pretty hard. Let's see. If you couldn't stream Gwent, what would you stream? Gwent dies tomorrow. Big announcement. What do you guys do?
Ideally, for me personally, I would just like to stream. If someone said, okay, here you have 20,000 average viewers, what matter what you play, I'll probably end up just every week playing a different game. That's what I would probably do. Just whatever new game or fun game I want to try out comes out. That's probably what I would be doing.
Sure. I think that's what any streamer would ever want to do, right? That's
Yeah.
the dream. 20,000 viewers, play whatever you want, have the most fun you can, right? Which would be cool. But assuming I still need to like pay a rent and things like that, and I'm operating within like the confines of needing to create good content, I would probably be living on beans and rice for the rest of the year, really desperately searching for a new game that I could try hard and super go for it. I feel like if it died tomorrow, the strat I would probably go for is pick up the Souls games, start doing challenge runs, and prep for Elden Ring. That would be my strat personally.
I like that. Looking ahead, Spessy, your thoughts?
I mean, I've got like a few different things. Like, first and foremost for me, like I can't get like stuck into single player games that long. Like, it's just something about it. I'll pick up a single player game and I'll drop it. Right. It was the same with Witcher 3. Like, it took me like a year to complete the game, even though I loved it. So it would definitely be something like multiplayer focused. Most likely, FIFA would probably be the go-to, right? Like, as a big football fan, I used to play FIFA all the time, so makes a lot of sense. So that'll be the most obvious. I mean, New World's coming out as well quite soon, which I'm looking forward to playing and maybe experimenting with some content. Call of Duty, like I used to play that all the time as well, but I think I've kind of moved away from that. But FIFA's the most likely one because I've got plans for like football content, like non-gaming related, right? In the future. So like FIFA sort of seems like a nice like natural link between football and that kind of content. And gaming.
To go back to what Bushy was saying, in a hypothetical universe where like Gwent died tomorrow, and what do we do now? I think what I'll probably end up doing would I'll probably start looking at other major card games. Like, okay, what is there? There's Hearthstone, whatever.
Yep.
There's Runeterra and there's Magic, and then I'll try to figure out which of those appeals to me the most, and I might like try a bit of each of them for like a while and see which one I like the most, and then transition towards one of those if that was the case. But
yeah,
that's just a very hypothetical situation.
Like my plan this month actually was to play Runeterra, Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, and try them out, see what I thought of them, because I'd never played a different card game apart from Gwent, right? Like, and obviously the amount of time I've sunk into Gwent, it was probably time I tried something different, and then I ended up picking up Storybook Brawl because it's free to play, obviously, new community, so I just got stuck in with that and ended up really enjoying it. My plan was to try like Runeterra and stuff. But obviously, as you mentioned previously, that the barrier to entry to these games is pretty significant. Not only have you got to learn the game, not only have you got to like embed yourself within like an already existing community, but like you don't have, unless you want to actually sink money into the game, like you're kind of limited in what you can actually do in it.
Yeah, I think my choice would be kind of like a compromise. I'd look at the card games because there's going to be an exodus from Gwent. And I'd have to make a call between your Hearthstone. Do I have enough of a core audience? Maybe just stream whichever one I think gets the best shot, viewership wise, and solely know. See what core audience I take with me, but also know I'm probably gonna get a boost just from the Gwent community dying. And then I would also really consider like Storybook Brawl, where it's like, okay, look, this game has no barrier to entry. If it blows up, it can be bigger than the rest because nobody has to sink in $100, $200 to be competitive. You just go, and it's a new game. It has support. Will we all flock to there because it's so easy and the Gwent community is really well aware of it? Or will it be people flocking to other card games? Try to gauge it too.
You want a community that's probably very similar to Gwent. I think Runeterra has this most similar vibe to Gwent.
Yeah, I think Legends of Runeterra seems like a good jump.
And everything.
It's also Riot Games, which is a company I really like because I enjoy League of Legends back in the day. Finally gotten unaddicted to that game. It only took 12 years. Only 12 years to stop liking that game.
A little bit too long, huh?
Maybe the hour for a long time. I don't know if it's still. It was like more than 1% of my life was just spent playing League of Legends. And I was like, all right, that's a lot of time. And I have no regrets, zero, none. Worth every single game of no regrets. Hashtag shameless. Not even close. I think Gwent's like a half the time I spent relative to League of Legends, and I've been full timing it. How long now? Anyways. Where were we? Let's grab another question. Let's grab another question from the queue. I talked about community a lot. Did that. Social media. Do you guys want to talk any more about money, or you guys do you think like we hit the topic well?
I could. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think.
Go for it.
Wait, you mean wait, are you telling me that every streamer is not a millionaire? Is that a misconception? That's lying.
Wait, Spiro, are you
Lie.
not? This is like a millionaires only.
If
like,
anything, I
panel.
feel like the stereotype in the Gwent community is that there's a lot less money in the content creation than there actually is. Mostly because I think people really underrate YouTube.
Yep.
Because on average, the normal CPM or amount of money that you make off of 1,000 views on YouTube is in between like $2 to $4, and that holds true across almost every YouTube category. I can't tell you what mine is because contracts. Nobody else here can tell you what theirs is either, right? But generally speaking, it's about $2 to $4 per 1,000 views, and you see lots of these streamers pulling in 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 views a month. That's a lot of potential money, you know, and I feel like the conception is that like every single Gwent streamer is kind of just struggling out here, which I'm not going to pretend like we're all rich, but assuming you optimize your content and you actually do your very best to try to make it work for you, you can make $30,000-$40,000 with not the most effort in the Gwent scene pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, the 30-40 mark, but we're getting there. I'm getting there. But I'm also a newer content creator relative to you three. It hasn't been a year of me streaming Gwent. But that is absolutely true. There is a break point as long as you have YouTube. If you I don't think anyone could really full-time it without a little bit of support, at least not in the States. Support from YouTube. YouTube is this ever-growing library of content to support you. And you can be focused on Twitch revenue, you can be focused on YouTube, but a lot of creators end up with about even income from both, some a little more favored than others. But as long as you have that, you can make it. Now again, 30 to 40K, is it, at least in the States and for Bushy and myself, is it the highest quality of living? No. But is it a quality of life you can support? Sure. As long as you know, ideally grow it down the line if you want something more ambitious like a house or a family, etc. But you can make it work.
And you're into finance, John. Surely you know with disciplined financial spending, you can take $20,000 a year and have a retirement plan, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you optimize your finances, it's relatively easy to be chilling.
Correct. I mean, I think for myself, I have more ambitious. I want to get back up above because I left a much more lucrative job than this, and I would like to someday surpass that lucrative job's income doing this. But I agree, especially if you're young and you want to try your hand in the streaming world to get your foot here. Because I think, for me personally, I think streaming has barely begun what the future looks like. Because it really is running your TV show. You're on as long as you want to be, doing whatever you want to be. That's a lot more potential than I have to stream speed runs. I have to stream high level card games. What streaming actually is much bigger. But you're correct. If you are able to start making income young, balance your budget, manage finances properly, you don't need a lot to get going. There's a lot of people who make a lot more money who are going to be doing a lot worse because they just don't know how to manage their spending. So I would agree with you. And Bushy voiced it. And even when I interviewed you way back, you struck me as somebody who knew how finance works, how money works, and was making the most of what you had. And you can go a long way, even if just a little.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's financial literacy is just like super, super low. So it leads to like these financial questions always being a little bit disingenuous because somebody's perspective is gonna be they think they need $100,000 to live, even though like realistically you don't need anywhere close to that. Especially if you account for like every possible factor you could, and you know, you don't need to be living in the United States to be a streamer. You could go live in a very low cost of living area and make the same exact amount of money, right? And it like if you really truly want to optimize the financial aspects of the game, and maybe you're already in a relatively low cost of living area, like there's plenty to be made.
Yes. I mean, I confess, I do personally want to make more than just what Gwent's capable of. But yes, you can make full-time income. Gwent's enough to support at least a handful of full-time streamers. Now, if you try to get 100 people in here, no. But there's enough right now. Enough to go around. Spiro, Spessy, got thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think this like what's not maybe that meets the eye of Twitch is the ad revenue is just completely garbage, right? Like, I roll ads to disable pre-roll ads on my stream. So if you run ads, it stops the pre-rolls, which are the ads that when you click on a new stream, an ad runs, right? Now, if you imagine, if you just picture yourself as Twitch viewers, you click on a new stream, and then an ad runs, the amount of time you don't continue to watch that stream, right? And you go and watch someone else. Like, that's why I run ads to stop the pre-rolls. I don't run ads for the money that I get from them because
ads.
like it doesn't exist. It's basically negligible, right? Like it is pennies. So like the Twitch ad revenue is a joke. Like, and that's why YouTube's so good, right? Because you actually have good ad revenue over there. Like the other thing, like with Twitch in terms of monetization, and it's something that I'm trying to sort of like bridge now is like sponsors. I mean, you look at YouTube as well, right? And like a lot of big YouTube channels, if you watch a video, it'll be like, yo, thanks to the sponsor for this video. And that's where like a big portion of the income comes from, right? And then like sponsored streams where you like play a game and you get paid to do it. Like those things are really ways of improving your Twitch revenue. But personally, I've found them not the easiest thing to come by. It's something that I maybe need to improve on. Like I've even wondered like whether like signing up for like agencies or something like that would be like worthy of my time. It's not something I've done yet, but it's definitely something I'm still considering. Like I get emails every so often, like from sponsors, and I look at it, I'm like, sometimes I'll be like, yeah, and then a lot of the time I'm just like, it just doesn't really seem like I'm gaining much from this, right? So that's like a definite big part of like how you can make more income from Twitch is with these sponsors and with sponsored streams, but you have to actually reach a certain point before those become easy to gain, right? And even then, like I don't think they're necessarily the easiest. You probably have to go out and find them, right? Rather than them just the best ones don't necessarily arrive at your doorstep. Sometimes they will, but yeah, it's not the easiest thing to find. I found.
Yeah, and the sponsorships specifically are a little bit of a tough balancing act, mostly because of that like tribalistic nature that we were talking about earlier, right? You go play Raid Shadow Legends, which I know both me and Spyro
Great game, by the way. Really, really good. Sponsor me, guys.
And like you're gonna get plenty of people in the chat that are just like, come on, man, what are you doing? Why are you playing this game, right? And like there's definitely a loss in like your perceived value for every sponsorship you end up taking on. So it's a bit of it's a tough balancing act to figure out how to maintain the value of your brand while also still monetizing it effectively. It's definitely tough.
I think it's one of those. It's for me. It serves as a goal of the larger you get, the easier it is to monetize. New doors open. If you're making, I have 100 to 200 viewers these days. Probably not going to get a sponsorship of note. Get me to 1,000, 1,500. Not only am I making a fair bit of income, now a whole new door of substantial revenue begins to open. But it's definitely not something to at least for me, I'm not prioritizing trying to seek that out. It's too small.
Yeah, and personally, for me, all of my sponsorships, I didn't like go out and ask for them. I got an email through my business email, which I do have linked below in like all my socials, which does enable that to actually happen, right? Which is obviously very, very important to actually have that information available. But yeah, I didn't go searching them out, but that also means that they're like relatively inconsistent, right? The rule of thumb that like the larger streamers follow is you want to be doing some sort of sponsored activation once every 2 weeks to 1 month.
Interesting. I've not heard that rule, but that's good to know. Good to know. Awesome. Well, guys, do you want to wrap it up here or keep going?
I think wrap it up because I'm going to eat and then I'm going to stream again in a little bit so I could do a bit of a break.
No worries. Then why don't we go ahead and wrap it up here? It's been 2 hours. Thank you, all three of you, for coming on again. We did another one of these. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah,
pleasure. Yeah, it's interesting. Nice to talk to people. Nice to be in the Gwent category again. I forgot what it was like, honestly.
That's gonna anger the chat. Let's see. But all right, everybody, take care. And if you're watching this, I hope you had a good time. And if you like, if you like it, let us know in the chat. Let us know down below when it's on YouTube. So maybe we'll do a 3rd edition. Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, shout out to Ahmed Ali McGrandar and Pseudonym81 for all their unbelievably generous support on Patreon.